Working. All right, hey everybody! Super pumped to have you here with us with MotherDuck, and we've got special guest Ryan Dolly here with us today. Ryan, say hi to the crew.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
Awesome, awesome. What are we talking about today? We're going to talk about how things are going with BI and the BI landscape and how AI changes things. It's kind of wild. Obviously, from my background, I started my career on the accounting side, and so I kind of came into BI from that side of the world. Heavy Excel, Power BI didn't exist at the time. I had the pleasure of using things like business objects. I'm sure Ryan,
Oh
you
yeah.
also did.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Um, for those of you who don't know, by the way, I actually worked for a BI company on the QA side as an intern when I was in college. A company called Melmo that was acquired by SAP. Um, and the funny story there is when we launched the app, it was called Roamby on
Yeah.
the iPhone through 2000 May of 2009. The feedback we heard from everybody was, "How do I get this on my BlackBerry?" So there's my I've actually been working in the space for quite a long time, dating myself a little bit there. Ryan, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe not all the viewers know you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I've been in BI like a similar amount of time. I think I got my start in 2010. And I was mostly a Cognos guy. I spent like a decade basically as the Cognos guy or one of the Cognos guys. And in that time I did. So I worked on a BI team. I started there, and then I took a brief stint at Oracle, and then I went to BI consulting firm, where I eventually became a partner at the firm,
Mhm, mhm.
and then kind of got sick of that and moved into startups. So I worked at Account, which is it's a cool tool. It's kind of like Miro meets a BI tool in a way.
Mhm,
It's like
mhm.
what if BI were an MMORPG sort of.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, and then I was VP of product strategy at Good Data for 3 years, and now I'm an independent advisor, analyst, and author covering the BI space, working with companies like MotherDuck.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
yeah, I mean, I have similar experience. I actually remember Romby. I had a friend. I had a friend who worked there actually, and so
That's so funny.
yeah, I remember that. I remember that well. It was like mobile BI. Now, what's
Yeah,
hilarious is that everybody wanted it on a BlackBerry. That's what's
yeah.
hilarious.
That was the Yeah, that was definitely the through line. I mean, we were working really hard on something really cool. At the time, I remember when I got my first iPhone, the popular app was the app where you would tilt it back and the
Yeah.
angle on the beer would change.
Yep. Oh
You
yeah.
know, so somehow we had the idea of what if we put charts on that? It was wild. It was wild. We had a lot of fun though. Down there in Solana Beach is where we were building that thing, which is just between San Diego and Carlsbad. Anyways, a lot of fun. So, I think I'll set the stage a little bit for, some context here, which is really just like, um, Opus 4.5 launched in November of last year. And what that brought along was what I've heard people say is like, well, it basically like solved front end, right? You could basically say like, hey, I want something that looks like this in React, and it would build it. And pretty rapidly following on that, we saw it get integrated into like Claude Web as this notion of like artifacts. And then, MotherDuck obviously brought out dives, and a lot of other companies have shipped similarly shaped products, which let you vibe code, or prompt your way into charts. And I think this is leading us into a crazy, crazy new world. And I know, Ryan, you've written a bit about that. And what's really cool about your experience is you're kind of connected into all of the leaders in the space. And so, like, tell me a little bit, like, what is the vibe? Like, what are people thinking about? Both on like, hey, we're building the thing, and then also we're buying the thing. Like, where are people at?
Well, that's the thing is like leaders are all over the place. It seems like when I talk to people. So there's some common threads. I would say first of all, it's a mixture of excitement and worry, which is probably doesn't just apply to BI. I think leaders across data and business in general are maybe feeling a mix of those two things. When it comes to BI in particular, I see kind of two things happening. One is this influx of kind of vibe coded front end stuff that the BI team is maybe producing some of it, but they're getting a lot of it flowing in from their end users. So it's like the classic when I cut my teeth in this industry, and I'm sure it's still true today. The main thing, like 50% of the projects I ever worked on started with an end user coming and saying like, here's this Excel spreadsheet that I built that has become operationally critical to my department, and I don't want to maintain it anymore.
I want to get promoted. That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Like, I need a new job. This job is not my job anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So like, hey, BI team, like turn this into a BI thing for me. And I think that's happening now, but the form factor has changed where it's HTML React apps that someone vibe coded in Claude or Codex or, even dare I say Copilot.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And so you've got that going on one side. And then kind of the other side, what I'm seeing is pressure from the executive team and finance looking at the existing BI stack and saying, look, these tools cost a ton of money. And the people who work for me are giving me incredible dashboards in HTML. Why are we paying for this tool? And so it's kind of it's the convergence of those two things. Like the existing tooling is viewed as clunky and expensive, and why do we still need this? And I think there are reasons you could make arguments you can make for why you still need it or parts of it, but I'm sure we'll get into that. And then just this kind of excitement at what you can do now with the models, but also real concern about, okay, how do we manage this? Like, when everybody's got their own HTML dashboard on their desktop, like literally an HTML file, like saved to the desktop next to a picture of the kids. And like that's how we're running the business now. Like how do we manage that as a BI team?
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I think Slack just, for example, added support for static HTML now inside of like embedded inside of Slack. So that just tells you where the momentum on this is going.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild. And I think like, I'll share personally, on the MotherDuck side, when we built out dives, we were kind of like, all right, this is like long tail analytics. This is for the really hard, annoying, thorny stuff that your BI tool is not flexible enough to solve. And then, like for us, that then put us in that exact spot that you're talking about, which is like, oh, actually, it's more convenient and easier for us to iterate on like the important things in the business in here than it is, in the BI tool we're using. And so I think like it's also causing lots of churn, I think, in existing BI tools because people are like, all right, let's see if we can actually like make this like have a go at this new frontier. Is that what you're hearing too?
Yeah, I am. I mean, so it kind of part of it depends on the size and culture of an organization.
Yeah, of course.
Right, like everything else. So anybody tech forward organizations and smaller organizations, I think, are already making a serious run at can we just vibe code this and trying to solve, they are running into some of the unseen things that BI tools do that
Yeah.
people really don't
Yep. Yep.
acknowledge or appreciate, but those problems are increasingly solvable, I would say. And then larger organizations, what I see is a mixture of openness, like, hey, let's try it. And when I talk to a leader at a larger organization, I don't tell them, hey, ditch whatever BI
Yeah.
tool, and
Hmm.
I say like pilot it, okay? Just pilot to figure out, because it's going to be different for everyone. Everyone's at a different maturity level and different technical capabilities, but just do a pilot on your team of like, how much of what we do today could we divert to more of agentic vibe coded workflow? And just be open to learn, right? It might be hardly any. You might be
Yeah.
shocked
That's
that
right.
it's
That's right.
most of what you do, right? Just go into it with an open mind. And that's kind of what I'm seeing. So
Yeah.
that's what I encourage big companies to do, especially like don't
Yeah.
don't don't be shy, don't be scared, give it a shot. Like there's stuff. Yeah, you have reports that are like SOC 2 Type 2 compliant
Yep.
reports,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and okay, don't vibe code those yet.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But a lot of other stuff, try it. Just try it and see how far you can get. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like, the other side of this is that like it seems almost like BI teams over time became invisible to their execs.
Yes.
Like can you help me like talk like explain that point a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's a weird it's a weird thing that has emerged in BI, but because of the way BI evolved and the way that especially like BI just became about dashboarding and visualization, and that really became all anybody saw. And,
That's right.
there's good reasons for that. Like hiding the complexity of what's going on under the hood from executives and end users is good, right? You don't want them to have to feel the pain of whatever you went through to develop it as a user. That's good. But the end result of that is that BI became synonymous in the minds of people who consume it with being just charts. And so when something came along that could generate charts much easily and more cheaply, it immediately engendered in the minds of executives and consumers like, oh, well, we can just replace that thing, right? Because it's just charts. If it's just charts and Claude can give me charts, then we can just replace that thing. And it really started to highlight the cost of procuring and maintaining these tools in the minds of decision makers and people who control budgets, where suddenly they're just thinking, I mean, tools cost a ton of money. And if my experience with BI tools is when you buy one, it tends to be a pretty good deal because they're trying to win your business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then starting sometime year 3, when you're just a renewal stream, like you get turned over to a different team who manages you, and suddenly things change, right? And so if you've been on a BI tool for 10 plus years, it probably costs an enormous amount of money at this point, especially if you're a large company. And so, so I think that that's kind of what's happened. The minds of executives, it's just charts, and so the value of what's happening under the hood, especially when you get away from anything related to like regulated data sets, maybe the value of that in a BI tool's a little more clear because of auditability requirements and that
That's
sort
right.
of
That's
thing.
right.
But when you get to pure analytics, like, hey, I've got a question and I just need it answered, the fact that the BI tool is just charts makes it look pretty low value in 2026.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right, right. I think and I think like, the hard part is like you said, there's a comment in here, like the charts are just the tip of the iceberg in
Exactly.
terms of what the value is. But like also a lot of those things have been abstracted, away from the user. They don't even see it. Like
Yep.
so I think this is a really, really interesting the actual complexity inside these platforms is quite high, right?
Yeah.
I think like when I think about what's actually inside of a BI tool, right, is it's often like a cache, right? That might be a full OLAP database in the case of like Tableau, right? They bought Hyper, for example. Um, there might not be one, depending on the tool. Some ones that are built on Snowflake now don't really have a cache, although I think they've all built one kind of as a result. But that's more of like a result cache versus like a database, right? There's some sort of notion of a semantic layer, right? There's
Yeah.
this notion of like security and governance, like who can see what when. Um, and then there's charts, and then there's exporting those charts, right? And so like, but the thing that users mostly interact with is like, either the exports or the charts, kind of the dashboarding part themselves. And so they don't see all those other pieces, which are
Yeah.
quite hard, and like no one wants to think about those, frankly. Very, very challenging. Especially when you can get a better chart, a better narrative more quickly, almost instantly, with AI, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think this notion of like, oh, like AI, can just replace this for cheap. Like, is this correct? What's your opinion?
No. No, it's not. I mean, I think what AI can do today that that I like the workflow that I really would never pass through a BI tool, honestly,
Hmm.
is kind of the ad hoc decision making, like the hey, I was wondering X,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's just so much faster and better and more efficient through something like Claude. And of course, there are dangers there, right? There's the danger of hallucination, and then there's the danger of
Hmm.
you not understanding the data or having access to the right data.
That's
But I
right.
would
That's
I would
right.
argue that there's ways to solve that. Context like data. I mean, tools like MotherDuck, okay, and then having good context management and that sort of stuff can make that a much, I think, better way for people to do that one-off or even like small department reporting. Anything that doesn't have to leave your little group. It kind of begs the question: okay, why use a BI tool at all for it right now? When you get outside of that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and people are talking about in the comments here, all the stuff. Someone had a list of all the stuff, caching, data performance, row level security, audit, cloud, front end, CSS. I mean, there's so much stuff. Like you just think about, okay, a semantic layer in a BI tool,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do we guarantee that someone in department X and someone in department Y and someone in department Z uses the same metric and gets the same answer 100% of the time when they ask a question, right? And
That's right.
that
That's right.
that is not a solved problem today when everyone's using Claude.
Right.
There
Right.
are obviously practices you can put into place to help, but I guess my question would be, well, you know, how far away are we from that being a solved problem?
Yeah. That's
And I think a lot of people are working on it, like you guys included, right? If you look at
right.
what
Yeah.
dives do, dives. I mean, it's I work with you guys, but also I run my solo consultancy and media brand on MotherDuck and Dives,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I as a BI guy for what I need I will never use a drag and drop BI tool again for what I need. I
Yeah.
feel quite confident about that.
I love that. So never. So first off, yes, I don't ever want to use a drag and drop BI tool ever again. Like I think one thing that did end up happening with these BI tools is that everyone got locked into these UIs that were very inflexible for
Yeah.
power users, right? And I think like one thing that we maybe went too far on, the pendulum swung too far on, I think was like, all right, you have this lockdown UI, you can only do this. And as it
Yeah.
turns out, like some of the best charts that you want to build, require tuning very specific knobs in matplotlib or something, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think it's definitely funny to kind of see how these things are going. I think it's really interesting to talk about like what things need to happen to like what primitives need to exist inside of a tool for it to be able to interact, for you to discard the drag and drop interface, right? Like what pieces need to fit in there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. So you take the drag and drop interface aside, what you need, like the first thing you need is some sort of content management system, right?
Yeah.
Like we still need a place to put the objects where people can find them, we can version them, they're discoverable, all that sort of stuff. And that's in many ways the first and most obvious problem of vibe coding, HTML, JS dashboards. It's like, well, where are we going to put them? And I think this is actually an underappreciated problem in BI, because BI really has two roles. Role one is to answer ad hoc questions and help with like point in time decision making. But role number two is, okay, we've made a decision. Now we need to agree on what metrics will tell us whether we're succeeding or failing.
Yeah.
And then we need to agree on some representation of those metrics that we all look at over time. You know, the thing you put on the wall that you can argue about in a meeting, right? That thing needs to be standardized. It needs to exist somewhere where everyone who has a stake in it can see it. And that is that's a part of BI that I think everybody just has taken for granted forever. That suddenly is a problem again, because of the just huge proliferation of dashboards and that sort of stuff. So that's number one, and then you get into, okay, there was this security thing. We need to keep track of who can see what, and it gets quite complicated in BI tools. It's almost as someone who's worked for BI vendors, there's an infinite degree of security, finer and finer ways someone out there wants to slice the security model. And so that can get quite complicated to manage. But I think then the fundamental thing is, if I ask a question and you ask a question, ideally it gives the same answer every time. The same input renders the same output, right?
That's right.
This idempotency thing. And that is not an easy thing to deliver when like BI tools deliver that today. And so if we want to slice off the drag and drop interface and we say, hey, we're just going to vibe code this, I'm totally in favor of that. I think because it's just, as a builder, it's a vastly better experience than clicking and dragging. I cannot believe what I can accomplish in a short amount of time compared to when I was using old BI tools. But, there's all this other stuff we've got to solve that just chopping off the head of the BI tool doesn't solve.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was always interesting to me is like the highest calling for a BI report in my experience was like, okay, we screenshot this and put it in the board deck, which breaks the entire lineage of the entire thing in the first place.
Yes.
Right. So it's like now we're having the discussion, on the board or in the board meeting about something, and it's like, well, hang on, is this right? It's like, okay, well now we've gone full circle on this debate. Although I do think it's very interesting to see how because a lot of like what I'm hearing from teams is basically like they're getting in previous like in the previous world, it took way too long to get data into like their, let's say, quarterly WBR, or like quarterly, business review meeting for their marketing team or whatever. It just took way too long to get the specific things. So they always did the old ways on the things that were kind of the prescribed path. And now with AI, it's like they're getting all this stuff, but everything is conflicting in the deck. And all the conversation is kind of like reverting back to, wait, how did you get that? Because I got it this way. Or like even worse, people are using these charts to like beat each other with a bludgeon. I don't know if you're hearing folks either in that world or like concerned about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I hear that a lot. I mean, there's a lot of concern with that, right? So it's like one of the goals of BI has always been, we walk into the meeting with some shared understanding of what's happening in the business, right? Based on data. And so there's a pendulum that swings in BI and has been swinging since before my career started between, okay, like that's the real problem. The real problem is conflicting numbers and people arguing my chart's right, no, my chart's right. So that's the problem we got to solve. And then what ends up happening is we develop these pretty rigid systems and these rigid methodologies, and then people can't get the data they need in time to do anything with it. So then we swing the other way. And it's like, it's all about enabling decision-making, fast decision-making. But then we create, we feed the fire of my chart's right, no, my chart's right. And so what AI has done is it has like taken that fire of whose chart is right and turned it into like an epic inferno. I live in the Detroit area, and 2 weeks ago, like we couldn't go outside for 3 days because there was so much wildfire smoke from Canada. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like in some organizations it's that level of inferno
Right.
of whose numbers are right. And so I mean, it's a real problem to solve, and
Yeah.
it's like people are having a very active debate in the comments right now about like different aspects of this, which I love to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we are, and we're really in like a. I would say the exciting thing about all this is we're in a. If you have an idea, you can try it phase, right?
That's right. That's
Like
right.
these problems are not solved; they will be solved, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity in solving them. And so if you're listening to this, I would say identify those problems within your organization and take a run at how they work for your organization within your culture and your data stack, because
Yeah.
that like there are promotions to be had, right, by solving these problems and new products to be
That's right.
built
That's right.
to solve these problems, and
That's
so
right.
that's the exciting thing about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I think one thing that everyone is who's adopting AI this way is speed running is like you would only it took you maybe 6 or 12 months in the old world to get to the point where someone would have a conflict in metric definitions because it was like, all right, we got to get all the data in the data warehouse, we got to stand up the
Yeah,
BI tool, we got to migrate the existing charts, we got to do all this stuff, and then we can be like, oh, now these two don't match each other, right? That took a long time. At least, when I was working on this stuff, 6 or 7 years ago now, we never really got to that place. But AI just lets us speed run all of that,
yeah,
right? So I think like everyone showing up with a different number is a real problem. And I
yeah,
think you had there was a great comment you made, Ryan, on LinkedIn about like defining words for the book you're working on. And one of those words was like metrics. And I think the thing that you had said about it was like well, I'll let you say, like, how would you define metrics?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to remember the exact words I used, but in my mind, there's two elements to a metric. One is there's like a logical mathematical element to a metric that is
Yep,
literally how is it mathematically defined so
that's
that the
right.
calculation renders the correct result, and that is, I would say, about 95% of what people currently put their effort into, but it's not 95% of the value or purpose of a metric. The other part of that is like a metric is really the difference between a metric and a calculation is just some math you run to get a number. A metric
Sure.
is really a social contract between data producers and data consumers about what is important to track within this organization and why, and what should we do about
Yep.
it, right?
Yep.
Like the best metrics combine all of that stuff. Yes, it's mathematically accurate and it has lineage and it's traceable and tracked over time. Yes, all of that. But
Yep.
the more important part is, why does this number matter? To whom? And what do we do when it changes in positive or
That's
negative ways, right? And
that's
so
right. That's
that
right.
that element of metrics has it's never been codified. It kind of exists ephemerally in like the social arrangements of an organization.
That's right.
And one of the things that I argue really strongly for in my book is like agents don't know any of that stuff. And so and they can't, right? They're not
That's
human
right.
beings. And so
That's
you
right.
actually have to write it down. If you're trying to build some agentic BI system, in your metric definition, it can't just be the math. It also has to be like, why does this matter to whom and what will they do with it? And that needs to be included in your metric definition so that an agentic system can pull that metric definition and actually be able to properly reason on it and do the right things with it. The same way a human being would. It's just you don't think about that stuff. Nobody in your organization thinks about that. It's like implicit knowledge a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then, when it's not implicit knowledge, or you and I realize our assumptions about what this metric means sociologically are different,
Yep.
well, then we argue about it and we come to some conclusion, right? But the machines are not going to do that for us, so we need to give it to them.
Yeah, that's totally right. I think one thing that I think we sometimes get lost on, as technical folks, is like the data we have is a shadow of the physical world,
Yes,
right? And we need to realize that the way we define these metrics is constrained by the fact that we're interacting with the shadow, not the real thing, right? And I think like that is it's easy to get lost in the sauce on like how to define a specific metric in a SQL definition, right? But the reality is like, well, does this matter? Does this number matter? What will we
Yeah.
do when it changes? I think those are the important things. And I think, it's easy for us to, de-scope our focus a little bit and drill into that.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, there's people in the comments talking about product management and actually chapter 2 of the book, is it chapter 2 or chapter 1? Yeah, because I
Early in
think
the
chapter
book.
one of the two is titled "Product Management for Data People."
Okay.
Right.
I love it. I love it.
So like I think really the solution to these problems for data teams is to embrace the product management mindset and philosophies that come out of product management and data product management. And I don't advocate strongly for certain standards or data contracts. I got friends whose whole careers are about data contract standards, right? Like I don't. That's all important. It's good. My opinion is kind of yes, do that stuff, cool, right? But it's the mindset. It's the way you think about managing data, especially as we see like these models just keep getting better and better. So more of the job will be about really understanding the what's the word Zhamak invented in the data mesh book? Socio-technical. Maybe she didn't invent it. Socio-technical. I first encountered it in her book. Like that understanding that becomes
Yep.
a bigger part of your job.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I think, kind of what I heard from a customer, MotherDuck, maybe a few months ago, they were like, maybe there's like less kind of like BI analysts and more like they use the term like context analyst.
Yeah.
But like I really think that like that is a lot of the work is shifting towards understanding all of the things around the thing because
Yeah.
now we can just define the specific thing with AI so much faster.
Yeah. I agree. In fact, I was a real struggle. Well, I've been working on this book now for coming up on a year, and honestly, everything I wrote in about the first 8 months, I ended up throwing out because of
Yeah.
Opus 4.5, and the book really changed to be about context management. So like I turned in the chapter on building data pipelines with
Yeah.
AI, and last week, and really the shape of the chapter is like, here are the key decision points you're going to have to make, like the technical things you might get hung up on, right?
Yeah.
And then here's how to manage the context around those, around data pipelines in general. And the book really doesn't have a lot of prescriptive, like, here's the prompt you type in to get this output, because that kind of became useless. That was like a really good thing for me to teach you a year ago.
Yeah.
But it's not anymore, right? It's because the models got so much better.
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely hard to write a book. I think right now things are moving so fast. You have to write fast and be willing to throw things away, I think. And I think the same is actually true. I saw a really interesting tweet from Charlie Marsh, who's now, working at OpenAI, and he's like, sometimes you just have to build the thing that's gonna get, is gonna get thrown away in a month because it needs to get built right now.
Yeah.
And so like on the flip side, actually, on like the BI side, we get to do that. Sometimes like, you know what? All right, I know that like some other team is going to build this into the central thing, but I need an answer right now, and I
Yeah.
can spend some Claude tokens on this. It's all good.
I'm totally in favor of that. I
Yeah.
think that, I think that, what I go back 15 years. In ye olden times, I designed, like, we had a very rigid SDLC at the place I was working.
Yeah.
And then I designed like a quick access SDLC because we were taking people who said, hey, I just need one more chart on this dashboard.
Yeah.
And we were putting them through the regular, like the 8-month SDLC process. It was like, what are we doing here? And the nice thing, so the great thing
Yeah.
about AI is like, when you develop your meta BI thinking,
Yeah.
you can take that thing that you just built. Hey, we just needed this thing and we built it and we know we're going to throw it away in a month. But maybe there was something in there that would be good to plug into the overall like designed workflow, the designed BI environment. And it's actually much easier to do now. I mean, you can literally ask Claude, like, hey, was there anything in this that I should like think about putting into my global metrics layer? And it'll be like, oh yeah. actually this one metric is actually might be kind of useful. Go ask someone if and it helps you enormously to bridge that gap between, hey, we just fired this thing out because we needed it now, and oh, actually maybe there's something from this that, yeah, we don't need to keep the whole thing, but there's one component of it that actually would be worth working into our overall BI environment, and it just makes that
Hmm.
path easier.
Yeah, totally. Totally, totally. What's interesting is so you've actually been building a lot as you mentioned, for your internal for your company, and then kind of examples, understanding the tools, with Claude, and something like MotherDuck. Um, what has been, I know you built that briefing book, which I thought was really cool. What kind of surprised you about working through that now, kind of building BI in the framework of someone who, like you, is has a lot of experience in the space.
Yeah. The first thing that stood out to me was just how shockingly easy it was to get to go from nothing to data. Like in my case, I built this briefing book, so you'll have the context that it's an example of kind of a classic BI report built into MotherDuck Dive. So most dives justifiably are really flashy, visual, cool looking things. I built a dive that is like Doom running in a dive, right? So it's all sorts of stuff like that. But I know from my experience that a lot of what BI does is still financial style reporting and regulatory style
Yep, that's
reporting. And
right.
so I set out to say, okay, instead of building something really flashy, let me recreate what I spent a lot of my career building, which were these more table of numbers, regulatory style reports. So what I did is in about a day and a half maybe, I went from nothing to extracting from the Yahoo Finance. There's a Python library that just extracts data from Yahoo Finance. So,
Great library.
yep. So using that, building a pipeline to do the extraction, to land it in MotherDuck, to then create some dives on top of it that are like financial statement reports. And
Yep,
then
yep.
from that to automate the distribution of those financial statement reports over PDF, which is something I was asked to do a lot with this style of reports over the course of my career. And so the first thing was like, I did that in a day. I mean, this was literally a quarter long project at the beginning of my career or longer. And maybe before AI, we had had advancements in tooling and that sort of stuff that,
Hmm.
okay, it
Hmm.
wouldn't be a 6 month project, it'd be a 4 month project, right? Like,
Sure, sure.
but now it was a day. And look, in a day, did I do everything you would need to do in a true regulated environment? Of course not. But I did probably 80% of it in a day. So that was the first thing that really stood out. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insanely easy to do. I will say I was comforted. Like there's people who are, oh, will BI analysts even exist in the future? I mean, I was comforted by the fact that my experience really did matter in building this. Like
Yeah.
my ability to point out bad patterns or know the words to use, the things to request, um, to be able to suggest to the AI, no, the way you've designed this like identity management to manage the automated PDF distribution, not the way I would have done it, right? Like that still mattered a lot. And I don't think I would have gotten to the outcome I had without that stuff. So I don't think your CEO is going to be able to vibe code what I built. So and really, I mean, in my mind, it was like all wins. It was, look, my experience, my taste, it all still mattered, but I was able to do what used to take me months in an afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think, like, and I think the hard part, and I think a lot of people have talked about this, right, is basically like, okay, we have these really powerful tools, but like, how do we help? And this is not really a question we need to get into too much, but like, I'm definitely thinking about like, how do we help junior people get those skills
Oh
too?
yeah,
Right? Like, we were in the salt mines, man. Like it sucked. Like, I
yeah,
would never wish that on anyone. But like, you do get like the really good experience building those things for people who have really high standards. And as a result, I'm very, very good at using an Excel spreadsheet these
yeah.
days. But also on the flip side, how do we help everybody, you know? up level is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck too much on that. I guess like maybe read your book, I guess is maybe part of that.
Yeah. 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 Shameless plug. There's a book coming out that will help you with that.
We'll talk about we'll let you plug it at the end.
Yep.
So like one thing that so like is your belief that like in maybe like small and mid-sized companies that they're pretty much going to start ripping out some of these older tools that don't have the right affordances and start kind of being more AI pilled in this specific space?
Yeah,
Or
I
like
do think
yeah.
so. I think obviously it will start with SaaS companies and people like that because there is degree of engineering rigor I think you need to have to make this work. Like if you're a small mid-sized company and you're a SaaS company and you are like everybody on your data team already knows how to use Git. Okay, like go now, right? You can do it now. If you're someone out here in the Detroit area and you're a mid-sized tool and die manufacturer, maybe you don't. There's a little bit you need to learn of just engineering principles and that sort of stuff
Yep.
first. But AI is a fabulous teacher, so I think you can learn it pretty quickly before you get rolling. And I think yeah, I mean I honestly don't see why for most of what you're doing today you would not choose to go down the kind of vibe coded path. And a tool like MotherDuck provides a lot of the infrastructure that you need to make it happen so that you're not just emailing HTML files to one another, right? Like that's the world you can't find yourself in. And to the greatest degree possible, and there is tooling out there that will help with that, right? And so, yes, I mean, my thing is like, yes, do it now.
Yeah. Okay.
Like now, do it now.
Just
Yep.
yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how far these things can push. Over the next few years for sure. I mean, even the next few months, it's wild. Um, I think here's what I want to do next. Let's anything you want to hit on in summary here, Ryan, and then let's jump into the comments here. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
really good conversation and questions that I want to hit on. So yeah, any parting shots here?
No, I think like the big thing is if you haven't played around with this yet, like you need to immediately today. Um, you what you will find is that it's really easy to upload a spreadsheet to something like Claude or connect Claude to MotherDuck and just fire out a pretty good looking dashboard. And if you're as a data person, especially if you know the data well, you will immediately find things in that output that you're like, okay, it got this wrong, it made this assumption about a metric that was incorrect. Like that's all true, right? I've talked to a lot of people who have that experience and then their conclusion is like, okay, and this is why we can't do this. We have to go back to the old way of doing things. That is the wrong conclusion. I would try it, find all of those problems, and then start to think to yourself about, okay, how would we solve these problems within my organization, right? And then like that needs to be the path that you go down, because I think the gains to be had from this way of working are so huge that that you have to embrace it, and you have to be. Yes, apply skepticism to the process, but skepticism in service of problem solving, not shutting it down.
Yeah. I think this is a really nice transition into the questions here. I think so. Shane just asked, what would you recommend Data Team does tomorrow, given the new AI for BI
Yeah.
world? I think you just answered that
That's it.
very cleanly. Yeah.
Yeah, and just be open to it, right? I mean, this is a really exciting time to be building in this space, and so embrace the excitement. Recognize that the objections you have in your head, like, oh, how are we going to ensure metric consistency? And LLMs hallucinate. I mean, the way I recommend you solve that in my book is, well, to the degree you can, don't let them, right? Like, don't let the context window calculate stuff. Say, write Python, and then save that Python to disk. So the next time you come in, you fire up a new session, it reads that Python from the last session, right? That's the way to approach this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think, a lot of it is like I think a lot about, okay, so a little context for me. So I used to run a ERP team at a public company, and not everything fit into that system. right? As hard as the ERP software provider wanted us to get everything in there, not everything fit in, and the BI tool was a critical, and the analytics was actually a real critical part of what we were building, right? Because we didn't perfectly fit into that. We were not a commodity trader that fit perfectly into that. Um, and so, I think one thing that I kind of think about here is, what is it like? How do we fit these pieces in together and like let the magic of the company work better, right? Not everything fits in these like beautiful prescribed workflows. If it did, every company would be the same, and they're not, right? And so how do we let the magic still happen? I think AI is going to let us get there. Um, Speaking of which, here is a really good question from YouTube. Will BI analyst roles and similar roles go the way of the graphic designer type roles did 5 to 10 years ago? Um, what do you think?
Uh, I don't know is the easiest answer. I don't know. I think what I always my stock answer when people ask me questions like this is I think that people overestimate short-term change and underestimate long-term change. So
That's
when
right.
someone
Yeah, yeah.
says, "Oh, agents are going to be doing all data work in, a year and a half, there won't be any data analysts, there won't be any
Hmm.
BI
Hmm.
analysts." I'm quite skeptical of that.
Yep, I agree.
When you project out 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who knows, right? Who knows? I think that the role is going to change a lot, though. I do
Yeah,
think that the I'm an expert at the complicated BI interface. Like the value I bring to the company
that's
is
right.
is the BI interface is so complex that only 1.5% of people can even figure out how to use it properly, and I'm in that 1.5%, and so that's the value I bring. Like that I'm quite certain is rapidly diminishing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Now,
I agree. Great comment here from Frank, by the way, that I just threw up on the screen here, which is, BI analysts used to be able to get away with just making visuals, organizing KPIs, and some light commentary. Stakeholders now doing this themselves, right?
yes,
Role has to evolve. How
yep,
how it will evolve, I think, subject to some debate.
yes. Yeah, I think, and then that's where the product thing comes into it. In my opinion, is like
Yeah, yeah.
if you start looking at your data, your BI, and your overall data practice from a product perspective, and then as your job goes from I'm the drag and drop guru to I'm kind of the person who best understands both the business and the data, and I'm in a position to kind of manage our data, our BI like a product, and I'm more of a product manager, and
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
an agent is more like the developer, and I'm the product manager who helps the agent build the right thing. I think that's there's an opportunity for to contribute a lot of value there.
Totally agree. Great question here that I'm going to pull up from Ali. Do you think visualization tools like Power BI will go away? I cannot believe some complex logic like how DAX implements queries would go away, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that look, if you let's just take Power BI as an example. I would say that Microsoft is already in the process of preparing for the Power BI user interface to be radically deprioritized. They recently switched over from the PBIX binary file to this new, I can't remember what it is, PBIJ or PBIR or something. Someone in the comments will know, right? But it went from like this binary report definition to a
Yep.
well-formed JSON report specification. In my mind, that is actually it's super overdue, but it's also step one. PBIP, thank you, Adam. The PBIP file is the first step in saying, you know what, maybe we're going to let an agent build this instead of building it through the drag and drop interface. So, does that mean Power BI goes away? Like, no, but it does mean that the drag and drop interface gets deprioritized in favor of more of a AI led agentic workflow. When it comes to like, okay, DAX, like complex DAX, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you how good Copilot or Claude are at writing DAX because I don't do it, but I know they're pretty damn good at writing SQL.
Yeah, what I would say about semantic layer languages is the problem they have is there's a lot of them and they are all very different in their implementation. And the advantage SQL has is we have 50 years of training data and models are just really good at writing SQL.
Yeah.
What will it look like? Do we need some sort of semantic layer? Like, I think you need some sort of way to make sure that programmatically you can always get the same answer, right? Ryan, you said, hey, like, put that in Python, right? Or TypeScript. I saw in the comments,
Yep.
right? I think there's definitely going to be a need for that, and you may not be able to express that simply in Markdown and have it reliably retrieve, right? So I don't think that need goes away, right? Because we
Hmm.
want the conversations when we're talking about the charts. Like, the most important conversation is, what do we do about these numbers changing? Not like debating the authenticity of the number,
Yeah.
right? And like, I think a lot of companies are like recircling that debate where like they're going into all to like their calls. I've talked to a few friends at companies that are becoming more AI pilled, and they're like, oh my God, everyone is shaping the narrative to match their own thing. It's very chaotic, like, and they're like, but like, there's not a clear path on that. They have so many different tools. Not everything's integrated in the data warehouse, all that stuff. So there's definitely going to be a pathway there. I think that we know that we need a way for to get those answers reliably. What that will look like, I'm not super convinced on form at the moment, but we'll see where it goes. I think here's a good one from Dave. For companies that have data ops, data science, data viz, and data analyst groups, so we're talking like pretty big companies, who
Hmm.
will be responsible for the product context management? This is such a good question.
Yeah. I don't. So in my mind, actually, the closer you are to the business, the better seat you're in to be the person who's responsible for this, because ultimately the product and context like management is about capturing the business and cultural realities of the organization and rendering it in a way that it can help the AI develop analytics and answer people's questions. So in my mind, that's the data analysts, right? They're the closest to it of all these different groups. These other groups, like data ops, I mean, that becomes, you know, I would say the data analysts are like the producers in this world and the product managers. If you're in data ops, I mean, there's a lot to context management. Frankly, we don't even know how to properly do it right now. I mean, like I manage it personally. I have a directory of Markdown files. That's what I do, and it works really
Yeah.
well for me. And in the book, I walk through a lot about how to do that. And then I have a chapter like, okay, you did it in Markdown files. Does that really work at an enterprise scale? Maybe not. And then here's some options for what you can do to scale it out, right? For more deterministic systems and stuff like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I think the ultimate answer is like, this is what I just told you is my hypothesis,
Yeah.
right? I think we don't really know yet, and we don't know what of these roles are going to exist and how they're going to exist in the future. But
Yeah.
I think the people who are best positioned are those who are the closest to the business and have the most experience translating the business into the data. That's the best seat to be in.
Yeah, I think, my perspective on this question, I think, is that explicitly I would expect that we will have more kind of data platform teams, and then a lot of things that were maybe previously centralized will decentralize back into domain teams, right? So your
Yeah.
marketing team may
Yeah.
have their own data scientists, whereas in the past maybe that was a shared resource, or whatever. I think, like, in those cases, the challenge with decentralization, of course, is like, especially with AI, you can move so fast. How do you keep everyone aligned? I don't think anyone's actually figured this out. I mean, GitHub is basically falling over for this core reason, which is like, we don't have the right abstractions for collaborating at AI scale.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Like, I'll speak for myself personally, but like, even working inside of, the marketing team and the DevRel team here at MotherDuck, I can have a conversation with someone. They say, yeah, okay, I'm going to go off and do that thing. And the next day we talk, and it is complete, and it is done in a way that I would have never anticipated. And it is so far down the road. It is wild how fast these things go. And so I think how do you collaborate in this world, I think, is really, really interesting, because there's pressure, I think, on both sides. Like, we need to collaborate better, but also domain teams can run way faster. And so how do you tie those out?
Yeah.
All right, great question here from Juan that I'm going to pull in here. Will standard reports like financial reporting coexist with AI driven analytics? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people have been telling me that standard reports are going to go away for literally my entire career. And they're not going to go away. So let me give you a scenario. I am the CFO and I want to check the current state of our core four financial reports. Do I want to wake up in the morning, log into my laptop, go to a chat bot and say, what was this metric? What was this metric? What was this metric? And then do it again tomorrow? Or do I just want to look at the statement, I think AI will build these things, right? AI will build the standard reports. I actually anticipate a future where there are more standard reports because they're easier to build, right? The barrier to building them is lower. So in situations where maybe you wanted one in the past, but it's like, we're just going to get by with this spreadsheet because it's too hard to build the standard report. Well, now it's not.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think what do I really think about this? Yeah, I mean, I think like the most important thing is that the social contract is intact, right? Like we are having a conversation about what we do about the thing, not if the thing is right. And I think, that is a very durable principle. We'll see, we will see how things go, but I think, the pattern that I've seen evolving is you use AI to build a deterministic thing, right? You use the AI, which is non-deterministic, to ask a question, to do some archaeology, right? To discover the thing that is unique about your business, and then you can encode that in a deterministic package.
Yep.
All right, next thing here. I'll also share a quick story. So I built a Slack bot we use inside MotherDuck. We call it Quackbot, that is connected to our database, and you can ask questions to, and it will tell you, how many leads did you have yesterday, and all these things. And I started looking at the logs, and one of the things that other people are asking for, one of the top things is, hey, okay, great, this is a good answer. Can you send this to me every Monday? So even in the non-deterministic UI interface, people are like, okay, how do I make this? And I'm like, all right, I probably should add that. That's on my list of a short list of things to add some sort of cron inside of the Quack bot.
Absolutely.
Which is maybe not a standard report per se, but it looks like it. All right. Next question here. What about big players implementing ontology layers for human and agent data access?
Yeah. So this is an area like we step outside my expertise when we start talking about ontologies in any serious way. Okay. What I would say is my read on it is we do need some standard place to define all the soft stuff that used to just exist in people's heads, right? We do need some standard place to define that. And I don't use the term soft like in a pejorative sense, right? It's not a data pipeline or a metric calculation. It's, what do these words mean and how do they relate to one another? And we all know that we don't need an ontology necessarily. We all have a shared ontology, but it exists. It's distributed. It's a super highly parallel processing distributed system called the human brain of all the people who work at our organization, right? And so we do need some way to distill that into something that AI can reliably read and understand. As far as who builds it and how they build it and what it looks like, that's kind of where you get into the the Juan Cicada, Jessica Talisman world where I defer to their expertise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same way. I'm not sure. I have never worked at a company big enough to need an ontology.
I haven't either.
For those of you who are there, please let us know how it's going.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, we're gonna wrap. yeah, exactly. We're gonna wrap up here. Ryan, what do you have to plug?
Yeah. So listen, the first thing I want to plug is if you like this conversation, I'm actually doing a live stream at 2 p.m. on Friday where I will vibe code an app in MotherDuck using dives and flights, like just live. It's kind of a low key, expect things to go wrong. I'll just be messing around sort of thing. So it's just like a cool, come hang out in the chat, ask questions, that sort of thing. And then other than that, the Super Data Brothers show, I'm in season. So that's every Thursday at noon. Tomorrow at noon, On my LinkedIn profile, I will be, and on the Super Data Brothers YouTube channel, it will be Matt Housley joining me. So we're going to be talking about actually BI, the state of BI, and Matt has some pretty interesting research he's doing on incorporating like vector stores and knowledge graphs into BI. He thinks that this has gotten radically easier, but nobody realizes it yet. So we'll be kind of going deep on topics like today, plus that sort of stuff. And then my book with Wiley, tentatively titled "Building Data Apps with AI." It's a highly Googleable name. Is coming out in April, so look for that.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah,
now
connect
now
with
we're
me
gonna
on
hold you
LinkedIn.
accountable.
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you
Yeah.
want to follow my work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm just going to plug one thing real quick here. I put it in the chat. We just launched our conference this fall, dataoutpost.ai, where we're going to have lots of conversations like this with lots of people that are way smarter than me. Really, really excited to get that out there. We have a special intro price on it now. Would love to see some of you all there. It should be really, really fun, and we will see how far things are along in this pathway. In a few months. So, thank you so much, everybody. We're gonna wrap up. We will see you all around.